Hello, hello, hello. Is my mic on? Yes, it is. Happy Thursday, folks. Welcome back to the Indies Under the Knife stream at the usual time. Going to be changing soon, but this week and next week we've still got the regular Thursday stream, and they'll generally continue to be at the same time of day. But if you want to know what's coming up, just keep checking the channel. You'll be able to set reminders for streams. So if they're not at a time that you're usually expecting them, you can set reminders for those sorts of things. If you're in our Discord, there is a helper role you can follow called Stream Alerts that gives you an automatic ping whenever there's something on my diary. And today we're checking out I've called them 3D parkour games. They're kind of variations on that theme, platforming and stuff in kind of different 3D settings. And it's a nice kind of contrast because we've done a lot of thinky games this week. Did Amber Spire on Tuesday, did Deck Builders on Monday, lots of kind of turn-based thinky stuff. So it's going to be nice to get back into the realm of thinking about things like, you know, speed and space and spatiality and game feel and all of those kind of things. And I think the kind of baseline question that I'm going to be asking with all of these questions is just how does it feel to move around, and is it kind of satisfying? And that's like the make or break first thing, and then we can get into like deeper structural things with these games. Wolfrin in the Twitch chat. Hello folks over on Twitch. Yeah, we're checking out Project Structure 1, which I think is one of those kind of mega structure games where it's a very sort of ambient, trippy. I mean, it says a first-person exploration game, so maybe this is a little bit less constantly trying not to fall down a big hole and more of just kind of exploring. That looks like it might be quite chilled out, so I'm going to put it at the end of the stream. And then we've got Planet Surf up first. That looks like it probably requires the most attention. I think I've followed this developer on Blue Sky. I seem to remember seeing this penguin before. We're being a slippery penguin, which is wonderful. And then Explosiovania, a 3D platformer using sort of Quake-style rocket jumps with fireballs, which is a really neat central concept. I like the idea of that. So yeah, we're going to get Planet Surf up and ready to go first, and then Explosiovania, and then the structure. Just need to tell it to download that one first. Who's in the chat? Hey, Devil House Games. Morning. I put a little border on this window. Let me know if you find it annoying or anything. I can take it away. I have the power. It's one of those little fiddly things you do when you're procrastinating. Oh, maybe I'll put a border on something. Yes, that's what Planet Surf is. So let's just check out the homepage while that one is downloading. I really do want to play this one first because it looks like it requires the most focus. In this 3D platformer, a very slippery penguin must waddle through strange worlds filled with many penguin challenges. If you struggle to move, mouse good, you will become sad penguin. Yep. I would live by those words. Shoot snowballs, parkour, surf, and fly through the air at high speeds to unlock maximum penguin potential. Just going to check if the developer sent any notes with that, or just... No, just sent the game in. That's fine. Oh yeah, no, I have got notes for that one. This is a difficult single-player 3D platformer that uses surf and bunny hopping movement mechanics from Counter-Strike. There's some enemies thrown in and targets to shoot. This is meant to be a chill solo experience, but also very challenging and precise. So yeah, I don't have that Counter-Strike experience, so I'm not innately familiar with those mechanics, but that's probably a good thing from a kind of playtesting point of view. Let's leave that for a moment. It's a big old download though. Usually these, if I kind of need to trigger something just before the stream, it's not still going. We'll check out what the other stuff on the page is. Museum rules apply. Don't touch anything you're not supposed to. Okay, that freaks me out a little bit. That's like the equivalent of one of those electric buzzer hook and wire games, and but it's moving and I can't see what I'm doing properly. The white border covers the chat a bit. That's good to know. Okay, let me just sort that out. It is now a black border. Yeah, with this type of game, it's going to be difficult because I'm not going to be very good at it. And that means that you're only going to get a certain type of playtest data off of me, which is like, what is the experience of playing this game when it's not for you? That doesn't necessarily mean I'll hate it, but, you know, whether or not it kind of closely feels like the Counter-Strike movement or not, I kind of feel like I'm just inherently not going to do very well at this, which means that you're not going to be getting kind of information from a player that's representative of the sort of person that would enjoy this. And that's just one of those things. Nearly ready to go, though. Pepper said, there's a significant learning curve with CS surfing, so it'd be interesting to see how it onboards. Yeah. And some of that won't be, is there an explicit tutorial? Some of it will just be like, how long do I get to practice a skill before you move on to the next one? I tend to find with very skill-based games, that is the thing. It's they're very susceptible to what we call designeritis, which is like when the game is too hard because the designer is used to being their own playtester and they've tuned all of the game to what suits them, which I think is why it's so important to have a structure in your game where it's very easy for you to jump around between levels so you don't get a temptation to make the intro to the game way too hard. And then you're giving playtesters something that you find fun, but they won't find fun because it's just too challenging for them. But the thing I tend to find with skill-based games, often the onboarding just kind of rushes you through too many new skills very, very quickly. And then you don't really get a chance to practice the skills. And it's not even just a skill-based game thing. So I think I remember experiencing this with Gorticulture, who played recently, from one of our patrons, where the tutorial was just like explaining a concept, showing you a thing, and then you'd move on to the next one. And by the time I got to the next one, the previous one was out of my head because I hadn't been like forced to do it multiple times. Because I think a good tutorial is like gradually giving you the tools, showing you how they work, and then making you use them a couple of times so that you remember them. And you can trace that back to even like learning the most mundane things in your life, like tying your shoelaces. You wouldn't have learnt them by someone just telling you and showing you how it's done or getting you to do it once. You learn the things by repetition, and you need to like get people to repeat a skill a few times before you move on to another one, especially if they're unusual new skills. Right, I'm going to switch to full screen because I think this is going to tank the webcam. The music and art choice is already going well together for me. Penguin time or nap time? I don't know what that means, but I'm going to click on penguin time. Okay, so we've got a level select. And that means that if any of these is too hard, I can kind of jump to a different one, which is pretty neat. Although, when I highlight these, they go black. What's going on there? New game. Okay. Bro, let me play. Shoot the button. Okay, I'm steering left and right with DNA. So steer left, press and hold A, then mouse left. Left click to shoot snowballs. Okay. Reset with R. Okay, I need to... I've played so few games. Well, no, I do play games in WASD, but I'm so not used to seeing like the D key represented on its own like that, without like the whole set of 4 keys. So I would say use the icon of like the set of the WASD keys together with the D lit up, because I just found myself looking down at the keyboard to work out where the D key was. Okay, so we're gonna look to the right and turn to the right at the same time. And it says press and hold D, then mouse right. So, I think this really needs to get in front of some Counter-Strike Surf people so that you can actually see if it matches up with how that feels to control, because I have no reference point. So far, my experience with this is it doesn't feel very fun to fail, which is, I think, going to be a problem for new people. We've got a very fast retry loop where it just sets you back, which makes sense for speedrunny type games, but it's a little bit underwhelming. It's supposed to be gradually turning. Is that the diff? I'm trying to turn like suddenly in big chunks. I think maybe I'm supposed to turn gradually. The problem is, when I'm getting it quote-unquote right, it doesn't feel like I'm getting it right. Like that time, I flew up in the air and I couldn't tell why I made it that time and I didn't before. This is the problem that I have with sort of twitchy rage-based games a lot of the time, is I don't feel like I'm learning a skill, because even when I get past a section, I don't really know how I did it. See that? I failed then, and I don't really know why I did. There's not a very clear sense of what's kind of taking me off the track or whatever. I mean, my instinct is that a full 90-degree turn isn't like the easiest thing you could start people off with. See, why is it making me fail there? What's happening there that's making me fail when after I turn that corner? Just... I know there's at least one time I've been going dead in the middle and it's sort of failed me still, and I can't really tell why. If I go up in the air, because I've sort of half-piped up the edge, I seem to get fail as well. I'm supposed to keep exactly in the middle and not touch the edges, but it doesn't feel super intuitive because it only registers when that's happening sometimes. Like, it takes a little while. So I would say the problem that I'm experiencing is that it's not super clear what the fail state is. Sometimes it feels like the fail state is because I'm not on the water in the middle of the track. Sometimes it feels like I've touched an invisible wall around the edge, but the game isn't communicating that. So you need to dig into the rules of what's actually happening in the code and make sure that the game very clearly communicates that, rather than making assumptions about what the player should already know based on like a very old Counter-Strike subculture thing that, you know, you're making a game about cute penguins. I'm sure a big chunk of your audience will be Counter-Strike Surf players. I'm not, and that means that my experience here is representative of all of those people that come to your game because they want to play a funny, fast little game about cute penguins. And yeah, so I'm just need to quickly nip over to the thing and scroll my chat down because it's got stuck. You can't be in the air, right? I mean, we can't. People are saying that this is not the same, or Counter-Strike Surf is about this or that. The problem is the initial thing of trying to get around these two 90-degree angles is too difficult for me to see what the rest of the game is. So, I mean, I can't believe that you've made a game this big with this much content and you haven't sat behind a person in like the real world who's having the same problem as me and thought, oh, I need to redesign that first level, or I need to communicate that mechanic better. There's no leeway, but the real problem for me is that when I fail, the game isn't properly communicating what's causing me to fail. So if the fail state is I hit an invisible wall and that kind of kills me, then we should see the wall flash or something. If the fail state is I'm not supposed to be in the air, then we need to feel that. I can't feel anything. It's just there's like a tiny failure sound and I get reset. I think this is a really good example actually of I'm not necessarily saying we need to blow the penguin up or anything, but it is a good example of why video games often end up being so violent, because violence is such a quick visual metaphor to help communicate if something is succeeding or not. And that's why making like child appropriate action games like your kind of Spyros and Sackboys and Astro Boys and all of those Astrobots, all of those types of things is interesting, a kind of interesting creative challenge, because you still need to communicate all of that stuff like, oh, you failed, in a way that gives that visual feedback. And I've been talking about this a lot on the channel recently, but your game should give emotional feedback on when the player is doing the right or the correct or incorrect things. So all of the stuff that is meant to make the player feel kind of triumph or shame or whatever, based on little moments of getting it right or getting it wrong, is really, really important, because that's how you learn. And you will probably remember this. Various points in your life, you will remember a time when you've really screwed up, like socially or in a kind of intellectual arena, or like let a team down in a sport. You remember those things very strongly, and that's because shame is a great teacher, and that's why we have game show buzzers, and our character dies and explodes in a million bits. And I understand speedrun games, or like games where you're failing very frequently, like Super Meat Boy or Blood Thief, they want a very quick reset. But the problem is, before we even get to the reset, the moment of failure is not being communicated. It's just like, oh, for some reason you flew up in the air. I mean, sometimes I can see why, because I hit that lip and I go up it like a ramp and then I'm in the air. But there's nothing to indicate why in this game going up in the air is a bad thing. You know? I think if the camera zoomed out and we saw the penguin fly off into the sea, then it would be clear why going up in the air is wrong. But it just looks like I'm going up in the air and the game should be pushing me back down with gravity, and it's not. And the game just has this arbitrary rule where it's like, oh yeah, by the way, there's no gravity, and if you go in the air, you lose. And yeah, like someone said in the chat, that's not how Counter-Strike Surf works. And it also isn't a thing that's sort of established as being part of the rules of this world, either, apart from just the game mechanic that sets you back. And there's just a whole lot of missing stuff in kind of closing the loop of the mechanics and how they're communicated and how they're kind of tied into any sort of emotional feedback for the player. It's a shame. I like the aesthetic of this game. I think the water is going to make people's eyes hurt after a while when we're this close to it, but I think the music and art choices together are really great. There's a sort of late 90s club culture vibe to this that I really kind of vibe with, as one of the people who was like a teenager when PlayStation was doing its whole, yeah, nightclubs, video games are for grown-ups type stuff. This whole thing appeals to me very much, but you just need a little bit more. I mean, if you're going to have this arbitrary rule that going up in the air kills you, which feels wrong. It feels like I should be able to slide up in the air and then come back down and land like I'm doing a regular surfing or skateboarding game or something, and I can't. But the problem is when someone's stuck in this kind of retry loop because your game's too hard. Well, first off, I would design the first level so that the turns aren't 90 degrees. They're like 30 degrees, and then they go up to 45, and then they go up to 90. So design your first level so it actually onboards people into the skill, because immediately needing people to make 90-degree turns is not great. The thing about the gravity is like, yeah, I mean, if you've decided that's a rule of your game and it's fun, then you need to communicate it well. So if you're going to fail me for going up in the air, show the penguin flying off the track or something, but don't fail me for going up in the air and then not make it feel like a failure and then fail me anyway, because it feels like I'm doing jet skiing or surfing and the gravity should be pushing me back down. So if you're not going to make it work that way and you're just going to decide, oh no, I'm going to be really strict and you're not even allowed to go up in the air, then you need to make an explanation for why that makes you fail, because you haven't done that. And the problem with all of this is that even if I sit here and I try and work out how the game rules work, there's nothing to really emotionally reinforce why I should care about any of it. And this is why I was coming back to that idea of like shame and like why we make a big deal out of when a character gets hurt or when a character dies or when you fail in a game, is because that's like teaching, that's emotionally reinforcing why the player should care about the thing. It's like adding this extra little bit of like polish and juice that is about creating a little bit of deliberate frustration. Because if I saw the penguin fly off or something happened that was like a bit more dramatically, you messed up, then I might be feeling a more positive type of frustration where I want to continue to play the game, because people that like kind of hard massacre games, part of what they enjoy about them is the constantly failing and retrying. But that frustration has to feel curated. It has to feel like something that you've deliberately done from a game design perspective and a creative direction perspective in terms of how it's communicated and like all of the emotional impact of it. Because the frustration I'm currently feeling is just, it feels a little bit lazy. It feels like, you know, there's nothing to explain why that is happening. Like people have said in the chat, that's not how it works in Counter-Strike surfing. There would be some gravity. I don't know. I can't confirm because I've never played that. It doesn't line up with the expectations of people who play these games. It also doesn't line up with people's expectation from reality or from similar games, because I would expect this to operate more like a kind of jet ski video game where, okay, it's like, okay, I go up a little bit, but I can kind of come back down on the track. But if I go up too far, I fall off the track, and then we get an interesting failure. There's a lot of kind of juice and feedback that's not here, and that means that I feel less charitable about the bits of the game that might be deliberate design decisions, right? You might have decided that you want the player to stay on the floor and not go up in the air. Okay, make that feel good then. Make it feel good to be on the floor and bad to be in the air. Make it very clear why we fail when we go in the air, if you're going to stick with that route. But my gut feeling would be that there just should be gravity, and I'm not sure why there is. Just looking back in the chat, because we're going to have some surf sickos up here. Connor said, I just realized this is like Counter-Strike surf maps made by people who think there is one correct way to play surf. Normally they frag you if you go off course instead of embracing shortcuts. Ah, okay. Yeah, I would really advise the creator of this to go and play Blood Thief, because one of the things I love about Blood Thief is there are some insane exploits where you can like jump across the level and go to the track in a weird way and turn it into a figure 8 when it should have been a 0. And that's fun. And I think the more a game constrains you down to this kind of rock band type challenge of can you do exactly the right thing at the exact right moment, I'm not going to vibe with it on a personal level, because that's not what I play games to do. Like, that to me is just so antithetical to my idea of fun. It feels like being in a spin class or in some sort of aerobics class where someone is just yelling at you what to do at exactly that moment. And I understand that that's what some people get out of certain types of games, like, you know, racing games and things like dance mats and stuff. But for me, like, A dance mat works if it's a physical exercise. Then I find it an interesting challenge. When it's pressing buttons on a computer and making sure that you press exactly the right thing at the exact right time, that feels like that gives me a very strong feeling of you're wasting your life. You may as well be applying the same skill set to like learn to play the saxophone or something a lot more useful. So I think if you're really going to hook people with that kind of gameplay, which is already quite narrow, you need to really, really focus on the communication and the emotional aspect of it. You know, I think it's a very similar problem to what you get with rhythm games. What's the sock puppet singing training game that's around at the moment? Sock Puppet Superstar. You know, like rhythm games is like... It's barely a game because you're not really making decisions in a rhythm game. You've just got to do the right thing at the right time. And that's why they spend so much time on the feedback, because that's the experience that you're coming for. The skill test is like, yeah, fine. But in order for it to be like actually interesting to do, there needs to be so much emphasis on making the feedback good. So I think in the example that we were just looking at, it's like, why is there no sound effect when I'm on the water and a different sound effect when I'm in the air? All of those kind of little bits of polish. A jokester, I did shoot a snowball, and the snowball was so little and didn't have any sound effect. It was like a tiny little thing. I did it a few times at the beginning. It was like completely underwhelming. There was no impact when it hit things. So yeah, I think that one just needs to go back in the oven for a while, and you need to onboard new players into a map that doesn't start with those really harsh 90-degree turns. You need to make it very clear why the player is failing when they fail, and you probably need to reconsider the actual gravity mechanics as well, because they don't really make any inherent sense. If you want them to make sense, then you need to show why going up in the air makes the character fail. I'm repeating myself, but I feel like the problems with this are very kind of stark, and if I go into like loads of little detail on it, then you're going to get the wrong message. So I don't want to like give you like 10 things that I think need to be fixed about that game, because I think there's like 3 things that need to be fixed, and they're massive, and if you don't do them, then the market for that game is so narrow. Because it's basically you're narrowing your market down to people that like frustratingly difficult games, which are also not very polished and don't communicate why you're succeeding or failing very well. And the market for people that like very difficult kind of twitchy rage games exists, but you'll often find that those games are very funny to play and to fail at because of all of the other stuff that's going on. You know, I think, yeah, Marcin is a masochistic type of game, but I think even then, people that like hard games, they like all the bells and whistles that go with that are like celebrating your success and failure, and that game just doesn't have any of that yet. And I think it's vital to make it appeal to the sorts of people that, you know, like seeing their Super Meat Boy die 100 times. And it's also vital to appealing to people like me that need proper onboarding. And part of that proper onboarding is making the first level easier. And part of the proper onboarding is just making it patently clear why we're winning and losing, which it currently isn't. So I think there's a really general game design thing there of, you know, you understand how your game is meant to be played, and you understand how it works under the hood as the developer. Those are 2 things that you already understand. You understand the code base and how all the interactions work and how it's put together, and you understand what the player is supposed to do, and that's why you built it that way. But the game needs to communicate all of those things so that the player can have the same mental model as you. The player is going to have a mental model that they come to the game with based on something that they've played before, right? In psychology, they call this a schema. It's like, for example, the example that's often used... So the example that's often used in psychology for schema is... If you've only ever been to a restaurant, you're going to have a mental schema for what it means to go and be served food somewhere. And then if you go to a different type of eatery, like a cafe, you will have a schema for a restaurant and it won't actually fit because there are different things about how it works. Like, does someone come over and serve you at the table, for example? Do you pay before your meal or after your meal? And someone that goes out to eat a lot will have these different schema, and they'll go, okay, a restaurant is different from a cafe, right? So a foodie who goes out to eat lots of times in a month is going to have these different mental models of different types of eating places. Someone who comes from a different culture with a different eating culture, or is really poor and never goes out to eat, for example, is going to have a more limited set of mental models. And that means when they go into any particular restaurant or cafe or burger van or whatever it is, they're either going to like take the wrong mental model from somewhere else and apply it, or they're just not going to have one at all. And the game we just looked at, it's like, okay, some people are going to bring the mental model of how does Counter-Strike work and apply it to your game. And if your game doesn't work that way, then you need to like actively teach them it doesn't work that way. And that means you basically address, I mean, the kind of bad way of doing it is telling people directly through tutorial pop-ups and stuff. The good way of doing it is showing it through how all the interactions work in the game. So for example, showing that you're not allowed to go up in the air by having the penguin ping off and die. That would be an example of just the game teaching itself through like what's happening on the screen. And that means that you're directly addressing that problem of people coming in with the wrong mental model of how the game is supposed to work by immediately showing them, you might think that this is Counter-Strike surfing, but actually it works this way. Now, the other direction is that you go, okay, well, people are going to come in with this mental model, so I need to make sure that what I build fits it very well. And like, for example, in the game that I'm currently working on with Gleb, Golem Gourmet, which used to be called Dirt World, we've got quite a lot of weird stuff in the game. And for that reason, I wanted to make sure that the actual platforming feels as close to Spelunky as possible, or feels as close to Rogue Legacy as possible. Just taking like the best in class games that people who like this genre of game will already have played, and making sure that the controls and the character feel all map onto that, because then we're creating a like cognitive shortcut. So when the player comes into the game, they're going to understand their mental model that they already have matches the game, right? And I think one of the issues we have a lot is people talk about player expectations or genre expectations as if it's purely a marketing thing. Like, people will come to your game and it doesn't meet their expectations as a consumer, and that makes them angry, and then they leave you a bad review. It's much more of a, can they even play the game in the first place type thing. Because if you make a, I don't know, if you were to make a first-person shooter nowadays and you decided you were going to use A and D on WASD for turning left and right like original Doom, that could be a fun gimmick that you could build a whole game out of. But it also really needs to justify itself, because people come in with this muscle memory for how you control a first-person shooter on a keyboard or on a controller, and everything that you do that deviates from people's expectations is going to make it harder for them to play your game, and therefore it's going to make it harder for them to enjoy the game. So I think a problem we have is whenever we frame things in terms of player expectations and market expectations and genre expectations, it makes it sound like players are like these like petulant, entitled people who are just like, I want it to be the way I expect it to be. But it's also about like how easy you make it to learn, and the more familiarity there is with existing games, the better. And I think if your game is kind of going to be attracting these two groups of people, which is people that have played Counter-Strike surfing and people that, you know, haven't played that but want to play like a relatively casual, easy to understand but very difficult kind of Twitch rage game, you need to make sure that the game is like working for both of those groups of people. And what I saw from what we just looked at, the penguin surfing game, it just didn't feel like it was going to be doing, you know, eat justice for either of those groups of people. And you've got a mental model of how the game works, and you've got a code base, and the way that the game works doesn't line up with anyone's idea of how it should work when they first come to it, and that's going to be like a innate problem with the game. But it's going to be even more of a problem if your game doesn't communicate what's different about it in terms of how it works and why that works that way, you know. So fail states, win states, showing when you're doing a good thing, showing when you're doing a bad thing, all of that was missing, and that's, you know, that's a problem. And it kind of shows how big a problem that can be, even in a relatively, I don't want to say small game because it had loads of levels, but a relatively simple game that doesn't have loads of mechanics. The feedback of those mechanics, the visual aspect of those mechanics, all of the auditory stuff is important for people to be able to understand them. It's not polish, and it's something we keep coming back to over and over again on this channel. There's a lot of stuff that gets dismissed as polish, which is actually just fundamental communication of how a game works. Okay, let's check out Explosiovania, which is our sort of rocket jumping based. I don't want to say movement shooter because I don't know how much actual shooting we're going to do, but I like the idea of this. John Romero still uses UHJK in FPSs. That's because it's got very small arms, because he's actually a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Not very well-known fact, but... Ever in hell is for Okay, we're in hell. Very Ocarina of Time hell. I really love it when retro things are like several retro things mashed together rather than one specific thing. Because the game description sounded like, okay, this is going to be a sort of Quake, Hexen type, 3D Realms, ID Software type thing. And then I get in here and it's like, what in the Ocarina of Time? Okay, we've got a mantling mechanic. Got some auto mantling. Did I just duck? Jump feels nice. Got your little jump grunt. Possibly the N64 sound font. I've been listening to so many N64 sound font remakes recently. Someone did the whole of the Latris album by Tool, and it's great. Okay, let's raise that. This feels good. I'm liking this so far. There's a little bit of a... Just trying to work out what happens with the head when you mantle, because if you're like turned slightly and you go and do a jump mantle, it sort of automatically turns your head for you, which feels a little bit jarring when you first experience it, but I don't know if that's something I'll get used to pretty quickly.
Did you just fall down the pathways? No one has done that since the Eye of Evil was stolen.
Okay. It's like a Chibi Soul Reaver kind of place. N64 Latris is genuinely good. I mean, I'm making a game where all the soundtrack is dungeon synth, so the N64 Latris album is very close to the vibe anyway. It's a good one for putting on when I'm developing. I think my compass is broken. Yes, possibly. Haven't had a need for it yet, anyway. Hello.
I wonder if you can hold tab to display a map of the current zone.
I wonder. Yeah, so very kind of simple 3D platform thing. One of the things I would do is make sure that the sides have a different texture from the top. I'm not having too much problem seeing where they are. The level design has felt quite intuitive. So you can see the way that this is structured at the moment is we have these side rooms that have a little guide to meet in, and then there's like a central jump puzzle to work your way through, and these are kind of optional, and I guess that means that if you've played this section before you can just ignore them, but The side rooms don't seem like you really need to go into them apart from to talk to those guys yet. But yeah, I'm finding the level design reasonably intuitive. It's quite easy to see where stuff is, but I think a very easy hack is just to make sure that the floor platforms that you stand on are just always different from the side textures. Ah! Just like Grandma used to say, always be holding down Tab or M. Yeah, I'm already over my queasiness about the mantle automatically turning my head. That's a checkpoint. A beautiful flower. Beautiful flower. Just, music's peaking a little bit. I'm not making any of the music in my game. I like making music, and I can make music, but it just seems like a really good opportunity to work with other people. And I would rather other people who are more competent at making Dungeon Synth than me spent like 4 hours making a good track than me spending 12 hours making something that's not as good as what they would have made, which is what will happen. I might do some bits myself when we get to the end and I'm like, this needs more upbeat songs or whatever, but at the moment it's one of those areas where I really like having other people contribute. Use M1 to shoot a fireball that explodes when colliding with the ground. Use the knockback force to propel yourself in the air. Don't worry, it does not hurt that much. See, it's not assuming that I know about rocket jumps. So we already don't have that problem that the previous game had. Okay, we're trying to get up there. Because even the term rocket jump is reasonably self-explanatory, but they still haven't assumed that we'll know what that means. In Golem Gourmet, we're not looking at... I think we're going to do, like, dynamic song selection, but not necessarily the soundtrack. Not necessarily, like, layered dynamic music. But I've got tracks marked out for, like, different occasions, and I think the idea is that we'll work out when we're near the end of a song, and then if the context switches, like you open a scary room or you open a chilled out room and the previous song is nearly finished, we'll switch to something that's been tagged as appropriate for that situation. And then I have stuff like when you run out of keys in Golem Gourmet, the music fades out, and that's sort of one of your cues that your run has had a kind of soft end. Hello.
I wonder if you get a special high fireball jump if you press space and mouse at exactly the same moment. Just a thought.
Ah, that felt good. Okay, so we get a special... Wanna get high? Special fireball jump if we jump as we press. Which is quite nice. See, look how many times it had me practice the new skill. This is what I was talking about earlier. Onboarding and tutorialization is not telling. It is telling once and then giving the player many, many chances to internalize the information by doing the thing. This is great. Having a good time. Great example of scope management as well, of like building the whole game around a character's like one thing they can do. Petition pathways. Region has been added to the world map. Okay, so that's going to be a level select, maybe?
I haven't seen Satan in like 666 or whatever years. I'm so bored down here.
I would like if they just did a little bit of an ouch when you fireballed them. Because people are going to do it, right? You know that people are going to do it. So just acknowledge the player's desire to fireball the little guys in a way that you think fits the game and doesn't break the game. Just making them go, ah, or something would be great. Little head twitch. Excuse me. Excuse me. Whoa. Okay. God, I really love this generation of sort of post-boomer shootery, movement shootery type games. Was it Oddcore I was playing a while back that had this kind of stuff? Just great. It's good. I'm going back round in a circle now. Okay, so this is where we got the... Huh. Okay. The game is like, you're going to start getting lost now, dude. You need to use your map. Haven't needed to use the map so far, but now it's time. It's map time. Ah, and here, we couldn't get up here before, right? So we've got a little bit of a kind of Metroidvania thing where it's like, okay, you've got your jump explosion thing, and it is called Explosiovania, so I was wondering where the Vania was coming from, but you know, level design where you need to go back to use the power you just got. Looks like we might have a slidey power that we don't have yet as well that's going to get us through there. Yeah, these types of games are really like one of the only thing that makes me want to learn 3D, really. I'm not attracted to 3D game dev just from making games look good, necessarily, but when it enables types of gameplay that I can't do in 2D, then I'm like, oh, I wish I could do that kind of stuff. I find stuff like this quite inspiring because it feels like a very well-scoped game that still doesn't... Oh. It feels like a very well-scoped type of game for a small developer to make. Here we go, we've got slide now. Hold shift to slide. Allows you to go under gaps, slide down slopes to gather momentum. Lovely.
I'm pretty sure you can jump while sliding. You don't even have to release shift. It will probably allow you to... push.
Past those gaps, maybe. Okay. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. Is it because the ceiling was too low? I don't know. It would be funny if we have CS surf mechanics, but it explains it better. See, I want to make a game that looks a little bit like this, but where you have a gun that uses Noita wand logic. And you can like pause the game with tab and swap around your components in your magical wizard bone gun and get different sets of projectiles. Basically exactly the same as the Noita wand mechanic, but applied to your gun in a sort of Quake-looking shooter. That's one of my when I get round to it projects. If you do it before me, that's fine. But I don't know. Maybe get me to help you with it. I'll do some art or something. I'll draw some dudes for you to shoot. I forgot I forgot the main mechanic. There we go. Hey. Can I slide and do a big... Whee! That felt amazing. That felt really good. Oh, I was supposed to slide there. Ah. It is time to touch grass. It was a very good birds flapping bit crush noise. Excuse me, eyeball. See that? Look at that! You knew I was going to do that, so you made it have a thing that it does. Huh. Whoa. Gabriel, let's do it. Next game jam. Let's get together and make Gun Noiter. So my idea was, it's sort of like a urban gothic setting, right? So like John Constantine. So your character, if you ever see them on any box art or anything, looks a bit like a sort of like goth detective. And then you have a mix of sort of, I guess, like what kind of levels you'd see in the original Deus Ex, right? Like really blocky levels, but they're modern setting, and sometimes you might be in a cathedral or something, and sometimes you might be in a tech building. And then the enemies are all like silly modern takes on different types of gothic monsters. So you're going to have vampires, but they look like city bankers and stuff like that. That would be the vibe I would go for if I made my Noiter shooter. Where am I supposed to go from there? It says there's a... I haven't actually been through there. What's going on here? Is that fraud? Excuse me, fraud. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good fraud. I'm sorry, fraud. I didn't want to have to murder you, but it is my duty. Need to go up there. So you can see a lot of bits in the level design here where you really have to kind of move around the space to see what you're even doing, which I think is a good quality for 3D levels to have. So when I came into this room, I couldn't really see what I needed to do until I walked around here. Right? Very, very simple thing in 3D level design, but something to be aware of is like how much does How much does the player just need to move around in order to understand the space before they actually do what they need to do? Because if you walk into a room and you can immediately see how you get out of that room, it's not as interesting because the player will often kind of have this experience of like either just directly going to the next door or sort of like forcing themselves to search every corner of the room when they don't really need to because they already know what they need to do. So having a room structure that kind of forces you to have to look around a little bit to even work out what you're doing in that space is generally a good thing to aim for, I think. We're seeing lots of quite good level design stuff here, even if it looks very simple. Yeah, I haven't been in many rooms where I've got confused or thought I've gone back to a previous room because they all look the same or anything like that. Do I need to shoot that? Yep, and that's going to bring that out. I think the purple thing is... Yeah, I don't know what the purple thing is. I mean, we've picked up gems from the enemies we've killed that have been purple, so I guess that's what that is indicating. But I don't know what they're for yet. What's this? A key! Hooked up the red key. I'm looking forward to the end of Collab Jam and seeing what people have made for that as well. I'm going to be spending a fair bit of next week streaming stuff from that, probably. Oh! 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 It's a boss room of some sort. Oh. I died. Where am I now? So is that eye through there? Is that showing me where the boss room is? No, that's showing me where the key is. Yeah, a little bit confusing, some of the iconography choices in this. It's like, that looks like an eye on the map, but then it's a key. I can see how it's kind of both when we see the 3D object, but it's a little bit... I don't know. Come on, blobbies. Yeah, I would probably think about the players don't look up problem. That seems to be quite a perennial thing. Thinking about how you light things, thinking about that textured. Maybe you have something that drips from certain types of platforms or whatever. Oh, this is where we came in. But now I can unlock this. Ah, I see. That's why the key looks like an eye. But then I would expect the eye to be the door. The eye icon on the map, I would expect that to be the door. And the key icon to be the key. It's a really good minimalist enemy design. So that's locked. Probably need to do a switch somewhere else. Ah. Don't know why I keep misjudging those. Or just forgetting that I'm supposed to do a big one. They're really getting a lot of variety of spaces out of very, very simple art assets. Really nice. Yeah, I mean, folks feeding back on the explosion effects. I would say that from my end, as a sort of player experiencing the game, I haven't really looked at them. They feel right in terms of the size of them. The sound is good, but yeah, I haven't really looked at how the effect is working or anything like that.
I've been trying to figure out how to open this darn door. My guess is maybe it's using that purple stuff that defeated demons drop. Let's see.
Okay, so whenever there's a door or key type thing, you need to shoot it and then it spends the resource. Okay, so the purple doors use the gems. So we've got keys that you need to find in a specific place in the level to advance, and then we've also got doors which require you to spend a resource that you farm from enemies. Now the game's not putting us in a position where that's very difficult at the moment, but maybe it would be later on. Or maybe there'd just be areas with lots of those doors. All massive nerds here. Hang on, have I already done that? Yeah, okay. that room says it's got a gem door in it, so we'll go back there. But I think I might be wrong. Yeah, we're all massive nerds. One of the things I've been thinking a lot about recently is like, I have a little segment on this in the book that I'm writing as well, which is just like, I think people expect to be able to have like a career in the creative industries and then be normal and base things in their life around like the people they grew up with or the norms in their family and stuff like that, which, I mean, first off, if you... And I'm not saying this to be like a you must be practicing all the time and never have any time off type thing, but I think, you know, people sort of expect to be able to like practice making things for 10 minutes a day and then just go and do normal people things like watch TV for 4 hours a day or whatever. And it's like those things are just not... They don't go together. You have to be obsessed on some level. And I'm not trying to like promote sort of toxic levels of productivity and you need to be working all the time. It's less about, oh, you need to be working all the time so you can make things. It's more, I think if you don't feel driven to make things most of the time, then you probably don't really want to do it that much. You know? Mentally vibrant. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I'm really trying to get used to sort of thinking about how I use my time critically and like what order I do things in the day, you know? Like maybe I can watch like some dumb TV first thing in the morning before I do anything else. Maybe that's the best time to do that, you know? I don't know. Just like not getting too stuck in habits for too long and not thinking about them. Fireball jumping doesn't work on regular walls, they're too smooth, but that purple material over there works for some reason. Okay, so they're grating the metal stuff. You can fireball jump off of it. In theory, you can fireball jump... Is he talking about that? That is purple. Or is he talking about that over there? Okay. I mean, don't say that purple stuff if we're right next to some purple stuff and then it's not that purple stuff. Check that I understood what that guy said before we leave this room. Ratman, I think it can be really, really helpful to have a lot of time away from a project if you don't... we were talking about this the other day, like, I think doing a little bit of work all the time is very good for like developing skills and making progress on something where you understand what it is. You know, like if your goal was like, I want to get faster at playing the guitar, then just doing it for 10 minutes every day and doing an exercise is probably really good. But when you have a more kind of creative problem solving issue, like working out even what the appeal of your game is, then I think that's when it helps to step back. So I have a lot of kind of forced time away from the main game that I'm working on because sometimes the other dev is working in main, or I've just got like a week where I'm just so focused on doing videos and stuff that I don't have time to do anything. And I tend to find that time when I do step away and then think about the game, it helps me to clarify sort of questions about what the game is and what should be in it and what should come out of it and all of that kind of stuff. Because I'm not actively like doing any code. So I'm not thinking with the head on of like the person that needs to implement things or the person that needs to change things. I think that's why it's helpful to think of yourself more as, you know, a person who makes X rather than the person who is currently working on this one specific project. Because you're always going to have like ideas for other projects and stuff, and you don't want to always abandon what you're doing to work on them. But also, if you've got a couple of different things you do, you can switch between them, and then that break from project A sometimes to work on project B sometimes just means that you think about project A in a better way. Because when you're constantly in the mindset of like the programmer that needs to make all the changes, you make bad design decisions because you're making decisions entirely on what's kind of either easy for you to do or interesting for you to do, depending on how how energetic you're feeling or whatever. So it says I can wall jump on these. Maybe I need to sort of aim down while doing it. Ah, yeah, there we go. So I have to do like a big jump and then like a wall jump like that when it recharges, but I don't think I have enough recharge speed to do that here. It looks like that's what this room is set up for, though. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the go outside for a walk and mutter to yourself about the thing you're working on method of design. I think that's could be very helpful. Look what's going on there. That's cool. Little vortex. Oof. What in the jumping flash? This is great. I really like this. I'm going to have to move on to the next one, but I think this is great. I would like to schedule more time with it. I'm just finding it a joy. I don't have a great deal of feedback. I mean, just the kind of classic universal things like make the walls a little bit more distinct from the floor, that kind of stuff. The level design is fantastic. Little bit of icon confusion earlier on. But yeah, I feel like I could spend a lot of time with this one. So this gets us over here, and then what? Do I need to do that and then jump on my own projectile? Is that the idea of this room? Ah! Movement. Yeah, main project, side project, lots of throwaway experiments. Yeah, exactly. I think you don't want to do it too much because you want to actually finish some stuff, right? But I think it does help to make you feel like you are a game designer or developer rather than the person who must finish this specific game. Because that's when you get really strong sunk cost fallacy, which is why I hate dream game talk so much. Because most of the time when you see someone's dream game, it's just the game they are currently working on. There's nothing about it that would make you think, oh yeah, this is definitely the most interesting thing this person could be doing out of all of the things that they've ever thought of. It's just a project that they care perhaps disproportionate amount about for what it is, you know? Okay, I'm gonna just exit out of that one. And then the last one, I think we're doing sort of not really a platformery type one, more of a sort of atmospheric walking sim type thing, but we'll find out. I'm just gonna quickly nip over and see if there were any notes from the developer on that one. Yeah, no notes on Explosiovania, but felt very positive about that one. Okay, Visa Harkonnen. Project Structure 1 is a first-person exploration game focusing on atmosphere and exploration of surreal liminal spaces which feature brutalist architecture. Okay. Is it going to load though? Is it going to load? It says it's running. I don't have a... Give me a sec while I get this working. Let's have a look at the capsule art for Explosiovania. Yeah, I think what's happened here is... This is a thing that happens quite a lot. I think someone's gone to a professional capsule artist and they've just done a thing they think looks cool and they haven't really thought about sort of evoking what the game is about. I would get them to base the art on an N64 game's marketing. Just it's gonna be much clearer what people are getting. You know, if you go over to New Blood Entertainment, where they're appealing to a very specific type of it is New Bloods, isn't it? That do all the boomer shooters. Look how close their marketing looks like Quake or Doom or whatever, because they're evoking the nostalgia for a particular thing. So I think if your game is doing sort of somewhere in between Quake and Ocarina of Time, then this should look like the marketing for those things, and it doesn't. This should look like a... You know? This should look like a Zelda cover, but like with the sort of darker setting and colors. Okay, here we go. Game's working now. Yeah, I don't really want to talk over it. Sound design is superb. I mean, it looks great. So I think one of the things you have to keep in mind for these types of projects is that this is basically an art game. So having a long sort of visually whoa kind of intro is probably fine, because there isn't really going to be any gameplay in this game. It's just going to be walking around interesting places, and that's not for everyone. But also, I think that intro is totally sort of what I'd expect a game of this type to have, sort of like Proteus but indoors type thing. Yeah, I mean, it's, to me, this is giving me like someone's played the beginner's guide, but we're going to get all of the sort of surrealism without it necessarily meaning anything. I think that's my gut feeling about this, is like we're going to get these really cool evocative spaces and sort of surreal vibes, but it's not necessarily going to mean anything, you know? It's going to be kind of trippy for trippy's sake. Which means that this is not a great way to experience it for either you or me. I'm going to put my headphones on for this. Immersion increased. I'm going to just put the audio up on the stream slightly. Yeah, don't expect any sort of direct gameplay in this game, because I don't think that's what it is here to do. Why is it always duck? The duck. I think putting that duck in this environment is just immediately giving control vibes. Which, you know, it's a great setting, great game, great aesthetic. Don't know if I want to play Control as a walking simulator, though. So the thing... So if you've never played games that were called walking simulators, the problem with that term is that people started using it disparagingly to talk about games where you didn't really do anything. You just wandered around. But all of the games that sort of progenited that genre, like Dear Esther and Gone Home, the player is doing something. They're walking around and they're thinking about the situation that they're in and the sort of story that's being told through the environment and voiceover and the things that they see. The problem with a kind of art piece like this is it's totally abstract. I mean, it's not even surreal, right? The duck is surreal, but this is abstract. This is just like making a feeling out of the picture plane of like shapes and light and darkness. And there's no sort of social content to what any of this is or means. And I talked about this before, like way back when I started the channel, when I did a video about a game called Inside that someone sent in, who I think is still part of our Discord. And it was all kind of surrealism and in someone's head and dreamlike. And it was like, okay, I get what you're going for and I get what I'm supposed to feel about this. But a lot of the cinema that this draws from, like your kind of Lynch's and Cronenberg's and stuff, is about something. It has a sort of social meaning that's underneath the dream. And I think a lot of these games that are just meant to make you experience these kind of dreamy liminal spaces don't sort of hit for me, because it's just... Oh, it stopped. Am I going to need to restart it? No. It's very cool though. It's a great mood. I can run as well. But yeah, it just, I don't know. It's like, it feels like a little bit of a waste if we're not doing something, because this is so gorgeous and I would love this to be like a puzzle game or a story that had something to say, but I don't think it does have anything to say. I think it is just purely about the mood of brutalism and... I collected a duck, apparently. Oh. Also, I'm made of this stuff. Which feels a little bit out of place with the brutalism now. I think I'd rather be a silhouette person than a sci-fi laser gubbins person. Skipping would be great. Yeah, I want to skip around here. Ah, the Quantum Fandangler. Yeah, I mean, all music plays. One of the reasons I scheduled this was I thought it was going to be a climbing megastructure game, because so many of them have this aesthetic, and I've played a few of them, and I just sort of assumed it was one of them and put it in, but it's not. It's a sort of Proteus-style trad walking sim that is just about vibes and visual art, which is... It's okay. That sort of thing can exist. But, just kind of want it to mean something, you know? The thing is, like, I think Lynch is a really interesting talking point for this type of thing, because all of Lynch's work means stuff and is about sort of the experience of a character or a community, you know, and there's a bunch of weird stuff thrown in there, but I mean, if you read, like, there's an abridged version of Freud on dreams. It's a tiny little book, it's like 90 pages long. I think it's still one of the best explanations of how dream logic works. You know, Freud sort of discredited for lots of different things, but one thing you can kind of give to him is that what he thought about how humans' brains work was based on working with humans in therapy, which some other kind of like psychoanalysis people who came later weren't even therapists and were just sort of like riffing on his work and changing it based on the 3 people that they ever spoke to in their lives. And I think Freud's model for understanding how dreams work is really neat, which is basically the Freudian model of how dreams work is dreams are sorting your experience, which is kind of how the modern psychology way of understanding dreams is as well. It's like it's random, but it's also sorting the experiences that you had recently. And in Freud's model, it's like you are trying to sleep, you're trying to rest, that's good for you, but there's something that's been stressing you out that would stop you from sleeping, something that worries you, something that bothers you. And what your dreams allow you to do is to process that thought and turn it into something that is the same emotion but similar. And that allows you to sort of continue to experience the thing that you're bothered by or craving or pining for or worried about, but it turns it into another thing, and then that allows you to sleep because you're not awake and consciously thinking about the thing that bothers you. So the example he gives is when a small child dreams, they will think about something they were denied during the day, right? So if you tell a kid they're not allowed to have an ice cream, then they will sleep and they will have a dream about being in a room full of ice cream, right? And then the older you get, the more the thing that you're dreaming about gets replaced with something else. So you might have a dream about one person, and it's actually that person is just very similar to this other person that you're actually thinking about. And the thing about movies like what David Lynch makes, and like Beau is Afraid by what's his face, who made Midsummer, those are dreamy movies that are about like dream logic and everything, but they give you enough of an understanding of the person who the dream is coming from that the dream can be an interesting puzzle. So in cinema, when we get these very surreal movies, they're sort of inviting you into this like Freudian analysis mode of thinking like, what does this all really mean? And the surface reading is like, oh, Lynch is just random. And it's not. Like, if you watch Mulholland Drive is about the American dream of like going and becoming big in Hollywood and then having that thwarted. And the dream that we see is like someone's like Freudian dream work, was what he called it, was like, you know, there's like a little director or a poet in your mind that makes up a dream that allows you to process this experience. So in Mulholland Drive, we get the woman who, Naomi Watts, is like denied a part at Hollywood, doesn't get the job, and then the film is like this big dream sequence of her mind trying to make sense of her, you know, attempt to follow the American dream being shattered. So simultaneously a film about the American dream and a film about what happens when someone is dreaming, like, and they've been through that experience of like trying to follow the American dream and failing in their life. Ari Aster's, yeah, that's his name, Beau is Afraid, is a film that is like someone's sort of dreamy, surreal experience of having a controlling mother and like the effect that has on them in their life. And we watch these things and we go, oh, it's very surreal, it's very weird. And it's like, well, yeah, but you're supposed to engage with it as a puzzle. That's kind of what they're doing when they make these sorts of things. And I think a lot of the video games that I see that try and hit on the same thing, some of it's a production constraint because we can't show the inside of the brain and the outside experience of the world at the same time. Whereas something like Mulholland Drive or Beau is Afraid are able to sort of mix and merge those things a little bit. And we see that a little bit in like certain types of horror games, like we see it in Silent Hill, particularly Silent Hill 2, which is a little bit more like, is any of this real or is it guilt? That kind of thing. What's it called? We Harvest Shadows has a little bit of this, where the ghost story, from what I saw from the demo, is very much tied into like the character's story, and you know, is the surreal ghostly thing we're seeing, is it real or is it like a projection? And that, I find that really interesting. I find it when we do weird stuff with games that games are very good at, and it's kind of surreal and weird, I find that interesting when it is a way of taking like what we experience in dreams and putting it into a medium that can be experienced interactively. But something like this, it just feels like it doesn't mean anything, and that's a missed opportunity to me, because that would be the thing that would make something like this really shine. If I was like in this weird dream space and trying to work out what it means, but it feels like it doesn't really mean anything apart from the developer wanted to make a cool dream space, and look, they did a very good job of it, and that's fine. That will work for some people, but when I see this aesthetic, I sort of see an indicator of something a little bit deeper that means something, and I'm not necessarily seeing any of that here. Just go back in the chat a little bit because I was waffling for a long time and I didn't. Yeah, my Beau is Afraid hit very hard for me because my relationship with my mum during the last couple of years of her life was very difficult, and that film was like, I mean, it's a funny film, it's like a darkly comic film. I always describe it as like, what if David Lynch made a 3-hour episode of Mr. Bean, because you're seeing Phoenix play this really kind of pitiful man who's getting everything wrong and doesn't really understand what's going on, and it's kind of funny, it's darkly comic, but you also see why he's that way, and that's what kind of film it is. It's like, you know, the dude becomes this way because of this other stuff, and you gradually sort of learn what that context is that's made him that way, you know. One day we'll get the grim dark reboot of Mr. Bean, and it will just be Mr. Bean, a psychogeography, and it will be Mr. Bean running around in this game. And there's like mum chasing him around, asking him why he hasn't got a girlfriend yet or whatever. What's the deal with eating the light orbs? I don't know. It also told me I'd collected a duck, which I didn't see because I guess it was a little duck on the ground, but I don't think that's anything to do with the big ducks. Ah, maybe we do collect the big ducks and I just didn't see the one that I got before. This is a cool space. Oh, look, hang on, let's see. Is this a... There's a cool trick happening here. That's nice. So I think this is bigger on... Or it's shrinking. Is it shrinking me when I go inside it? Or is that actually the right size? That was cool. I touched the duck. I changed size. See, that felt like the first moment where something really cool was happening, because we had the sort of perspective puzzle and the size change and stuff. Am I in a different place now? I think I am. Yeah, I don't want to come at this being like totally wanting it to be a different thing from what it is. I'm sure there is an audience for this type of thing that loves it, but I think my problem is because I like lots of things from lots of different media, and I think when you do something in a game, it really needs to sort of justify why it's a game. I think that was the reason that was such a cool moment of like going in the thing and finding it was bigger on the inside, or it seemed bigger on the inside, was that felt like a moment where it's like, oh yeah, this is why this is a game. This is why this is a game instead of just like a series of photographs or an animation or something. Don't mind if I do. Duck, toggle, sprint, space, zoom. We can zoom in with Z. Ooh, zoom. You know, I think if you're making games like this, and this is in your portfolio of stuff you've done as well, you could really clear up making music videos. There's something very music video-y about a lot of this visual design. And the great thing about doing that is then someone else gets to add the meaning to the thing. From a distance, I observed the orb. Yeah, so if you've played the Beginner's Guide, which is the game that Davy Reedon made after the Stanley Parable, which is a lot less comedic and a lot kind of darker and more introspective. There's a lot of that in this as well. Might play it again soon. I was super... I don't know, it bothered me a little bit when I first played it, but I'm not going to talk about it too much now. Go down here. Orb. I do not understand what these orbs are for. This stream has been going on forever and ever. Ever and ever. Okay, we're going to turn this into Dear Esther. I'm going to go full screen and just start talking about... I don't know what yet. I'll work it out in a minute. Maybe if I read Kafka while we were playing this, it would feel more meaningful. Or an organic form in my brutalist dreamscape. Wow, okay. We've been going an hour 45. We're going to end in the next kind of 30 minutes, I think. This is the future liberals want. It's great. The vibe change with the music's gone a little bit utopian now, which is interesting because you look through and it's like this form looks more like a real thing. It looks like a train or something, and then we got the tree and it's starting to like take on a little bit more of a sort of real place that's lived in by people, whereas the previous places were very abstract, and now we've got this music that's a little bit... It's kind of still mysterious, it's still dark, but it's a little bit more hopeful than the last bit of music that we got. Great feeling. See, there was a great sort of moment of contrast of coming into this area after the last one, but I feel like if I had been playing this and it wasn't on a stream and I wasn't like committing to playing it for 45 minutes, I probably would have stopped in that first area because it was so sort of felt like a bit of a one-trick pony, but then it kind of helped create the contrast for this area to feel interesting and cool. Difficult. Yeah, I just wouldn't have made it to this point if I'd have been basing what I thought the game was going to be entirely on that first 10 minutes. I probably would have stopped playing it. The duck motif isn't working for me as well. I think it's because it's repetitive. There's something interesting about like finding one everyday object in this place, but finding it repeated is sort of going beyond the uncanny into just like silly video game goat simulator territory, you know? So there's all of these little... So that's showing me that there's a duck over there, I guess. If I go that way. I think we've been this way. So Connor, yeah, I feel very similar to yeah. So Connor in the chat just said this feels like the kind of game that feels like YouTube fodder for topics like what is a game. Not saying it's not very impressive, but I think if I were to play this, I need to be in a specific state of mind. So my very simple reductive response to this game is this is boring. And that doesn't mean it's without merit because it's gorgeous. And it is evocative. I'm going to turn the music down in my headphones a bit now, though, because it's killing me. It's incredibly evocative, but it doesn't mean anything. And I think the problem I'm feeling with it is that it is simultaneously not gamey enough to be a particular type of game, but then it's also too gamey for other types of game, right? So, and what I mean by this is creating this great mood. But then what they've done in order to make it sort of have more qualities of a video game is put this collectathon stuff in, like find the orbs, find the ducks, look for the little clue that's going to show you where the duck is. And that's kind of like pushing it more in the direction of being a game than an art piece. And then that kind of creates more desire for it to be a game. And I just think, well, if you're going to make this beautiful environment, and then you're going to put like collectathon mechanics in it, you might as well go all the way and just make it a shooter or something. Because you've got all of this... You've got all of this kind of like really, really beautiful 3D level design. Nothing to do in it. But you've gone down that route of putting the collectathon stuff in, and that kind of pulls me in the direction of thinking that this is meant to be a video game rather than an art piece. And even the way that you're sort of marketing it as well. Let's go back to Steam for a second. That's not it. That's Explosiovania. A first-person exploration game focusing on atmosphere and exploration of surreal liminal spaces that feature brutalist architecture. Okay. I mean, that seems reasonably fair. It's got 47 positive reviews. Calling it a 3D platformer, not sure about that. But it's sort of, I think as soon as you start to put that collectathon stuff in, it makes it feel like you're going for a game that is supposed to engage people in a certain way. And what this is more of a cross-media thing, because I imagine there's, someone was talking about Superliminal earlier. I imagine there's like a whole subculture for these types of games where they probably think this is great and are quite happy with it. But my problem is, because it's drawing all of this influence from like experimental film, I just expect there to be a little bit more depth in terms of what this game is trying to make me think about or do. And there's really nothing to ruminate on. There's no sort of spoken element or story element that this game is trying to make me think about. And when I think of something like The Beginner's Guide, which has big sections like this, that is a game that is asking me to ruminate on creativity and the different reasons people make things, and a relationship between two characters. And then as I go into these spaces and I hear this music and I see the kind of the kind of way that this is set up to sort of evoke a particular feeling, it's merging with my ruminations on those thematics, and that does something really interesting as a piece of art. But what this has done is it's set up as like a really audio visually interesting thing with cool spaces to navigate, and then the collectathon thing is pulling it away from art and into video game in a way that I find a little bit grating, because it just makes it feel shallow, and like the sort of opportunity for this to mean something beyond look at these cool spaces and hear this music is being lost, It doesn't even have to be more gamey. It just needs to mean something. I think like let's get the stream demonetized. Let me just try something. We're going to do a remix.
Gates of Imagination presents The Trial by Franz Kafka, read by Arthur Lane.
Check this out. We're going to do a mashup. Can I put it on slow? Let's put it on slow. Playback speed 25%. Let's skip. We want where it's got dark already. So I don't know, I know what happens in the trial. I don't know blow by blow. So let's go to chapter 6 of The Trial by Kafka.
Lesson.
Okay, maybe not that slow. Maybe we'll do 85%.
I would have liked to have spoken to him. Maybe there will be a chance another time.
Now we're going to make it into a proper... This is a proper art game now.
My name day. That was very nice and attentive of him.
Here we go.
I forgot to tell you about it when I wrote, and I only remember now that you asked me about it. Chocolate, as I'm sure you are aware, disappears straight away in this lodging house. Almost as soon as you know somebody has given you chocolate, it is gone. But there is something else I wanted to tell you about Joseph. Like I said, they would not let me through to see him at the bank because he was negotiating with some gentleman just then. After I'd been waiting quietly for quite a long time, I asked one of the staff whether his meeting would last much. He said it might well do, as it was probably about the legal proceedings, he said, that were being conducted against him. I asked what sort of legal proceedings it was that were being conducted against the chief clerk, and whether he was not making some mistake. But he said he was not making any mistake. There were legal proceedings underway, and even that they were about something quite serious. But he did not know any more about it. He would have liked to have been of some help to the chief clerk himself, as the chief clerk was a gentleman, good and honest. But he did not know what it was he could do, and merely hoped there would be some influential gentleman who would take his side. I'm sure that is what will happen, and that everything will turn out for the best in the end, but in the meantime things do not look at all good. and you can see that from the mood of the chief clerk himself. Of course, I did not place too much importance on this conversation, and even did my best to put the bank clerk's mind at rest. He was quite a simple man. I told him he was not to speak to anyone else.
I mean, I'm being I'm being a little bit facetious, right? Connor in the chat said, then again, some art says something because they say nothing. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can make art that is purely abstract and form. And in a way, that's what brutalism was about as well, was just like kind of pure forms. But I feel like the problem I'm having is specifically adding the collectathon into it, because it kind of tells me this is trying to be a commercial video game that exists to entertain people. As soon as you put that little puzzle in of you need to find the ducks, the ducks don't really mean anything, or the fact that they are a collectible item that is a repeated motif makes them feel a bit meaningless. It's not like the in Control you have those anomaly objects where it's like a rubber duck and a magic 8-ball and a microwave, and the fact that they're all different makes it feel like there's some importance to them. So they have the same idea of kind of anomalous everyday objects in Pacific Drive as well. The car is one of them, but there in the lore there are different ones. I was being a little bit facetious by playing Kafka over it, because that's kind of it's what I call a BBC Radio 4 game, which is what Dear Esther was. It was like you walk around and there's a poem talking. But if I wanted to make this game into an absolute banger that got like reviewed in The Guardian and stuff, I would keep the collectathon stuff in. I would find poets near you or authors near you where they would just be flattered to be flattered to be asked to work on a video game, and I would say, hey, I've made this brutalist video game about feeling lost in big dark spaces. Do you have any work which fits that atmosphere and might be interesting for someone to listen to while they walk around in it? So when I say, oh, this game is not doing enough with like meaning and stuff, you can kind of take or leave that. But there are ways of putting that in the game that don't require you to be the writer, right? It always comes back to like collaboration and thinking outside the box a little bit. You could probably find someone that has something sufficiently sort of bleak and obtuse to say over this that would give people something to think about as they walk around, and then you could replace the ducks with objects that relate to that piece of prose, and then you would have something that feels meaningful and feels more like an art project, which this game is pushing in the direction of. But all the time you're sort of playing around in, oh, it's a collectathon, you're positioning this as like a commercial Steam game, and most people who play it are going to go, yeah, that was kind of okay, but it was a bit of a boring video game. Whereas if you push it really far in the direction of it being an art project, there's a good chance you end up getting like a Guardian or a New Yorker interview and stuff like that, which I think if this is the aesthetic of what you're doing, it just fits more naturally. So, you know, find a local writer or poet who would be really flattered to be asked to work on this. Do a tiny rev share with them, record 3 hours of their voice, change the assets for the ducks into items which are relevant to that person's life and their story, and you've got a banger of an art game. So yeah, I know I probably sounded a little bit harsh on this one. It's just, I think it's great. I think what they've actually built in this game is fantastic. I just think it feels like it's presenting itself in a way that people are going to come to it and expect it to have a little bit more than just pure aesthetics, and it is just pure aesthetics. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like when you look at all of the kind of great works of surreal cinema, some of the stuff we talked about earlier, okay, you know, Lynch or Ari Aster or David Cronenberg or whoever wrote that story, they didn't make every part of what you see on the screen. That was like a collective collaboration to make that thing. And I think it's okay to admit, like, oh, I'm really good at making work that has this particular mood, but it's hard for me to make that resonate with people by, like, making it fit into some sort of story or have some broader meaning. And I think this game is just, it's leveraging an aesthetic which is going to make people expect that thing of it. And, you know, this is me being super hypercritical because it's my job. It's got 44 positive reviews. The people who like it, like it. So you're kind of fine already. But I do think this could really shine if it went a little bit further into being an art game. And I think in order to do that, it either needs to lean very, very heavily on that sort of non-Euclidean thing that we experienced when I walked up into that weird UFO-looking thing in the first area, and it needs to go super far into that kind of like Manifold Garden type stuff, or it needs to just have a little bit more of a human content and like get rid of this weird space alien body, just make it a shadow person and have some narration, have some sort of tie to the real world, so that the kind of weird dreamy space that we're in feels like it means something. Learn poetry instead, yeah. That's a terrifying prospect. Or just put a Kafka audiobook over it, you know? One of my favourite game development stories is that when they were making Darkest Dungeon, they were listening to the two devs who were initially the Red Hook team, were listening to audiobooks that were like Edgar Allan Poe to sort of like set the mood for making the game, because it's all kind of sort of, you know, 19th century Gothic influence stuff. And I heard one of them in an interview say they were, for ages they were saying, oh, we should get a guy like this guy's kind of voice to narrate the game. That would be cool, wouldn't it? And it was always just a hypothetical. And then after like a long time of listening to that specific audiobook, they thought, oh, hang on, we can literally just track this guy down. We can find the specific guy whose Edgar Allan Poe audiobooks we're listening to and get him to be the narrator for Darkest Dungeon. And that's what happened. He died recently, rest in peace. The guy who was the Darkest Dungeon narrator. I remember seeing a lot of posts about it on the Darkest Dungeon meme pages. But, you know, you don't have to do everything yourself. And if you're making media projects and putting them on a platform, and they could be improved by, I don't know, spending $100 to get someone else to add something to them, I think that's usually worth the investment. I will always go back to Darkest Dungeon. It's one of my Desert Island games, I think. Let's try one more overdub, because that's fun. Okay, we're going to you're going to have to guess this one as well. Audiobook.
This is on
39 floors above. He watched the water emerge from the tap. This too had made its long descent from the reservoirs on the roof, running down the immense internal wells riven through the apartment block, like icy streams percolating through a subterranean cavern. His determination to make the documentary had a strong personal bias, part of a calculated attempt to come to terms with the building, meet the physical challenge it presented to him, and then dominate it. For some time now, he had known that he was developing a powerful phobia about the high-rise. He was constantly aware of the immense weight of concrete stacked above him, and the sense that his body was the focus of the lines of force running through the building, almost as if Anthony Royal had deliberately designed his body to be held within their grip. At night, as he lay beside his sleeping wife, he would often wake from an uneasy dream into the suffocating bedroom, conscious of each of the 999 other apartments pressing on him through the walls and ceiling, forcing the air from his chest. He was sure that he had drowned the Afghan, not because he disliked the dog particularly or wanted to upset its owner, but to revenge himself on the upper stories of the building. He had seized the dog in the darkness when it blundered into the pool, giving into a cruel but powerful impulse. He had pulled it below the water. As he held its galvanized and thrashing body under the surface, in a strange way,
So that's
he was struggling with the building itself.
Tom Hiddleston reading High Rise. Yeah, see, just see how much it adds to the game to have Tom Hiddleston talking about someone drowning a dog. Thank you for joining today, folks. That was I felt very negative today, but I had a good time. That was a very different set of things because I just saw the 3 sort of first-person games with slightly trippy aesthetics and just put them all together. That was Project Structure 01, which I think is really, really strong in some areas, but just feels like it's not quite hitting the notes that people might come to it for it based on what it looks like. The second game was called Explosiovania, which was very charming, and it's kind of on my list. I think I'm probably going to put it on my list of recommendations. So one of the things I've been doing on the newsletter, and if you've not signed up to the Patreon newsletter yet, you can go over and get the newsletter. It's just like the free tier of Patreon on patreon.com/indiegameclinic. One of the things I did last month is I just did a short recommendation list of like the 12 games from the previous month that I thought people should actually go and wishlist or play or whatever. I feel like Explosiovania is going to go on that list for next month. And the first game was called something Surf. I should remember this. I should have them written down when I start in front of me. Sorry, Planet Surf. And that was in its current state a little bit disappointed. I really like Planet Surf from an aesthetic point of view. It looks great. I think it kind of markets really well when you look at it on Steam. It's the sort of game I look at it, I think, yeah, I want to play with that. I want to kind of get good at that. But it just doesn't kind of communicate how it works very well. And yeah, just very little onboarding in terms of the early design of the game, allowing me to even kind of get into how the game worked, really. We were sort of just stuck for 20 minutes or so doing the same bit over and over again. So I wish the dev luck on that one. I hope they're able to turn it around, but currently the game just feels very fundamentally broken. And the thing that worries me with projects like this is you see how much content is here. You see how long the developer must have worked on this, and yet the experience that I had on this game at the beginning of the stream, that is indicative of someone who's been making a game for a year or two, and they haven't like taken it to a meetup or a show and just sat behind someone and seen what problems they're having and then adapted the game based on that. And that is a level of just basic kind of R&D level playtesting, which should be happening before your game has all of this content in. So that's the kind of thing that when I see it, it's disheartening, because it points at this sort of general culture that I've seen of people just sort of tinkering away on a game for a very, very long time and not seeing game design as a sort of back and forth with the people that need to play the game. This game, in terms of like the core mechanics and what I experienced in that first level, just feels like it shouldn't have gotten to this stage yet without those things being addressed and fixed. And I think that's probably like a methodological problem with how the dev is developing the game. And I think, you know, if we're honest with ourselves, if we went through Steam and found out of all of the 50 games getting launched a day on Steam, which people find an intimidating number, a lot of the ones that never do anything and don't get like a lot of kind of interest and don't get, you know, even played to the point where people are willing to review them, are going to have that same sort of problem of just someone has spent way too long working on something. They haven't actually checked whether it makes sense or works for people, and they've just plowed ahead with making loads and loads of content. So I really like certain aspects of Planet Surf as a project. It's really charming. I would love to be able to play it long enough to get to all of these bits, but the basic gameplay of the game is just balked to a level where I couldn't even do that. Yeah. And I will see you all soon. If you're working on Collab Jam as well, good luck. I'm looking forward to seeing people's games when they come in. Someone asked when it finishes. It is at midnight at GMT time. I guess it started on Sunday, so it's ending on the Sunday. I don't know. There'll be a countdown timer on the itch page anyway, so I would use that because that will be localized to you, whereas my account of it is based on when I set the time on my end. So, you know, what you need to do is, so it's going to end at the weekend, and you need to just pop on the weekend and see what the countdown timer is telling you at that stage, because that's going to be localized to you. May the 3rd, start submissions open from May the 3rd to May the 17th. So May the 17th is the Sunday. So you've got till the end of Sunday. But that might be, if you're in America, that probably means you've got longer. I don't know. Don't make me think about time. See you later. Have a good Thursday.